Morning all, Brian S. Pratt here. Going to read chapter 7 of Fires of Prophecy, book 2 of the Morcyth Saga. A little recap. James has acquired some friends. Jerome and Tanuk, both knife fighters. Delia and Cassie. They've acquired some wagons. They're going to head into the Empire to hunt for their friends, posing as merchants, caravan merchants. And they're hoping that they can pull this off. So, chapter 7. They traveled half a day after leaving the mountains before a town appeared on the horizon. It appeared rather small, just several buildings sitting at a crossroads. This town showed no sign of the Empire's occupation. The citizens went about their daily business, and children played in the road. "Wonder why this town remains untouched by the Empire," James asked. "Maybe it is in the Empire," suggested Delia. "Could be," he agreed. "I guess we'll find out soon enough." Drone led them toward the town, and as they drew near, the people became aware of their approach. Most paused a moment to glance in their direction before continuing about their business. Others ignored them altogether. One building had a sign of 3 barrels hanging above the door. Figuring it to be a shop where they could purchase supplies, they stopped. James and Jerome went inside while the others waited with the wagons. Within, they found a man in the process of straightening up the inventory. When he saw them enter, he turned and smiled. "Welcome, welcome," he said as he went to greet them. "How may I help you today?" "We need supplies," James explained. "We have a wide selection of goods for the traveler," the shopkeeper said. "What might you be interested in?" "Travel rations and water bottles." "You don't seem very busy," Jerome commented. "Business has been a little slow of late," he said, "with the war going on and all." He placed several packages of rations on the counter, then asked, "How many water bottles do you require?" 10. The man reached up to a shelf and removed the requested number of bottles and placed them on the counter next to the rations. "The Empire didn't come this way?" Jerome asked. "We're on the border," he explained. "We haven't declared our allegiance to either side, yet they both think of us as theirs. Sometimes it's confusing, but everyone leaves us alone here in Bindles." "How far is it to Khorasan?" Jerome asked. "About 3 to 4 days," the man said. "Are you going there?" "We have some goods to deliver, yes," James replied. "If you would deliver 3 packages for me," he offered, "I could let you have this for free." He indicated their goods on the counter. "Plus, when you deliver them, you would receive a bonus." James stopped for a second and then said, "Sure, we could do that for you." "Excellent," the merchant exclaimed. "I've been waiting for some time for a trader to pass through who would be willing to take them. Just wait here a moment and I'll bring it out." "Having goods from this merchant in our wagons would give us more credibility, if questioned," James replied. I missed a sentence. While he was in the back, Jerome came close and whispered, "Why are we doing this?" "Having goods from this merchant in our wagons would give us more credibility, if questioned," James replied. Jerome suddenly understood and gave James a nod with a slight smile. The man returned from the back with 3 packages and a bill of lading. "Take these to Zai Aldon of Khorasan. Not sure exactly where he is located, but if you inquire at the local merchants guild, they should be able to direct you." "Very well," James said, as Jerome collected the goods. The merchant handed him the bill of lading and then picked up his packages to carry them out to their wagon. James held the door open for him as they left the shop. Tanuk gave them an odd expression as the merchant walked over and deposited the package in the back of his wagon. Extending his hand, the merchant said, "I appreciate you doing this for me." James shook his hand and replied, "Glad we could be of assistance." He climbed up and sat next to Delia. Then he gave the merchant a slight bow as he said, "May you have prosperous dealings." The wagons began rolling away as the merchant said, "You too, sir, you too." They continued through town, and when they came to where the roads converged, Jerome automatically turned to follow the road going south. As the town fell away and finally disappeared behind them, the terrain gradually became more arid. Trees and bushes made way for scrub brush, as well as the occasional tumbleweed. "Kind of looked like the area around Bakersfield," James thought to himself. As the air grew drier, the farther south they progressed, and the temperature rose. They had warm, even hot days before, but nothing like this. James was literally baking under the sun, sure that he was going to end up with a sunburn. The road meandered along this desert-like territory for many miles before approaching another small town. The citizens there wore long flowing robes. A company of the Empire soldiers were garrisoned there, and when they entered the outskirts, an officious-looking man stepped out from a building just ahead. James's pulse beat faster when he realized the man meant to intercept them. As he approached, the man raised his hand. "Greetings," he said as they rolled to a stop. "Good day to you as well," James replied, giving him a small bow. "What brings you through Arakan, good merchant?" the official inquired. "Delivering goods to Khorasan," James replied nonchalantly. "Do you have a letter of travel?" the official questioned. "Anyone not of the Empire requires one to be allowed to pass through our territory." James reached into his shirt and brought out the official-looking letter and handed it over. His heart raced. He glanced to Jerome and saw his right hand on a knife as he stared intently at the man reading the letter. He knew that if it was not what James had been hoping it to be, they would have a fight on their hands. Actually, I don't think that would be the case. I think this guy would just think that James didn't know any better, that he was probably a new merchant, probably heading into the Empire for the first time, and I think he would be instructed on how to get a letter. I think that's what would happen. I don't think there would be a fight. However, when I first wrote this, I was contemplating a fight or not, depending on how this went. But I really wanted James and the crew to get to Khorasan, so that's why the letter's there. I really didn't want them to have to fight their entire way there. That would just complicated everything. The man read the letter and handed it back. "Very good. All seems to be in order. Hope you enjoy your stay here in Arakan." Everyone relaxed. Weapons were released and pent-up breath allowed to flow. "Is there a carpenter in town?" he asked. "We do have a blacksmith who can fill your needs in that respect," the official said. "You will find him down the road and a little off to the right. You can't miss him." Signaling Delia to get the wagons moving again, he said, "Thank you." "You're most welcome," he replied as he turned to walk back to the building from which he had originally emerged. "A carpenter? What for?" Jerome asked. "I want some shade to keep the sun off me," he explained. Already the back of his neck, not to mention his nose, cheeks, and arms were turning red. He could feel the heat burning into them. They went down the road and soon heard the sound of metal being hammered. Turning toward the sound, they came to the blacksmith shop. They found him working under an awning, hammering hot metal as he turned it into a horseshoe. When he saw them approach, he hammered the metal a few more times, inspected his work, and then laid the horseshoe atop the anvil. He placed the pinchers used to hold the horseshoe on a nearby table, and then came to greet them. What can I do for you?" We were wondering if you might have some long boards and nails I could purchase," James asked, "and maybe the use of a hammer for a few minutes?" The man nodded. "Got what you need out back," he replied. "But if there's any hammering to be done, I'll do it. Follow me." He led them around the side of the awning-covered area to piles of rough-cut boards along with a pile of scraps. "What will you be needing?" James got down from the wagon and walked over to him. "We're not used to the intensity of the sun in this part of the world. So we'd like to create a framework above the wagons which we could secure some blankets to in order to have some shade." He looked at the wagons and said, "I got the stuff for that. It'll cost 7 silvers. "All right," James said as he opened his pouch and took out the money. "How soon can you have it done?" "About an hour," he replied. "I have to finish the shoe before I start. Is there a place where we could eat while we wait?" The blacksmith pointed back the way they came in and indicated a 2-story building. "You can find something at the Cracked Pot." "Thank you," James said, then turned to the others. "It's going to be about an hour," he explained. "We may as well get something to eat while we wait." They got down from the wagons. Jerome and Chinook secured the horses to a hitching post near the blacksmith shop. Then they walked to the building indicated by the blacksmith and found an old pot with a sizable crack running down the side, hanging out front. Opening the door, they entered the common room and sat at a table near an open window through which blew a slight breeze. Once seated, a girl came over and started to speak. And spoke to them in the Empire's language. James held up his hand and said, "I'm sorry, but we don't speak your language." "Sorry," she said with an accent as she switched to their speech. "We don't get many from up north." "That's all right," replied James. "What's available?" "We have roasted goat or sliced goat placed between chunks of bread," she said. "The goat is 4 coppers and the other's 2. "Sliced goat?" James asked everyone. They all nodded. "Okay, 5 of those, please, and ale all around." He took out a silver. Will this cover it? Yes, sir, she said, placing the money within a pocket. I'll have it out in just a few minutes. She then turned and headed to the kitchen to prepare their meals. Sure is hot here, Jerome commanded to no one in particular. You said it, Jack responded. I've never seen it like this before. I mean, sure, back home it got hot, but this is crazy hot. Just make sure to drink lots of water so you don't get dehydrated, James said. The girl returned from the kitchen with a tray laden with a large heap of sliced meat and 3 loaves of bread balanced on one hand, while in the other she had a pitcher and 5 mugs. Jerome helped as it looked like she was about to lose it. A pitcher and 5 mugs in one hand. Now, I thought that was kind of odd when I first wrote it, but then I watched Rick Steves' Europe, and he did one about Germany and Oktoberfest, right? And there's these women, they would hold like 10 different mugs in their hand at one time. It's crazy. I don't know how they do it. Thank you, she said gratefully, smiling at him as he took the tray from her and placed it on the table. He gave her a slight bow and said, anything for a pretty lady. The girl blushed and placed the pitcher and the mugs on the table. If there's anything else you require, let me know. She then returned to the kitchen. Stop bothering people, Julia said to Jerome sternly. What? Jerome exclaimed. Can a guy give a girl a compliment? She glared at him. James took his knife and cut off 2 slices of bread and then skewered a piece of meat, placing it between them. Taking a big bite, he was reminded of hamburgers, though the flavor was a little stronger. Following his lead, everyone had goat burgers. The break from the trail was nice. Shade and breeze were always welcomed. They finished eating before the hour was up and relaxed around the table until time to return to the blacksmith's. Tinuk took the last of the bread and stuffed the remaining goat inside as he left the table, eating it on the way. They were surprised at what awaited them back at the blacksmith. Not only had the blacksmith constructed a frame for each wagon, but had also installed an off-white cloth covering for each. Seeing them enter, he came over and asked, How do you like it? Very nice, James replied admiringly. Not only would anyone sitting in the driver's bench be out of the sun, but it covered the entire wagon as well, shading the holding area. I watered your mounts, he indicated a well off to the side with a 2-foot trough. Thank you. You're welcome, the blacksmith replied as he left to work on the horseshoes. They climbed back on the wagons, Jerome on his horse, and resumed their journey to Corazon. The shade provided by the covering helped immensely to alleviate the worst of the sun's heat. Though it was still incredibly hot, at least they were no longer at risk of severe sunburn. Jerome didn't seem to be bothered by being out in the sun on his horse. After riding for a ways, Julia asked, What would you have done if the paper turned out not to have been a pass? James shrugged. I don't know. It would have depended on what he did. Think we'll be able to play this off in Corazon? Hope so, he replied. Not sure what else to do. They continued in silence, every once in a while passing a caravan or other travelers going in the opposite direction. After one of the caravans passed, Jerome slowed down until James's wagons came abreast and then asked, Did you see those men in the caravan? The ones wearing only a brown loincloth? Yeah, James said. I noticed them. I think they were slaves. The people who were captured when the city fell were dressed similarly before being marched south. Thanks, James replied. I didn't know that. Jerome gave him a quick nod, then resumed his place at the front of their small caravan. As time went by, they encountered more and more travelers, some having slaves, others not. Whenever he saw them, his anger blossomed, even though he was impotent to do anything about it. He would free them all if he could, but doing that would bring down the wrath of the powers that be. Miko must be his first and foremost concern. Not having reached the next town by the time the sun neared the horizon, they decided to camp off the road. The wagons were pulled in close to one another, and the horses picketed in a group nearby. They set about making camp when Tinuk came to James with his water bottle and asked, Have you any extra? Mine's all gone. A little, he replied. I was trying to make it last. Can I have some? Sure, he said, handing him his bottle. As Tinuk drank the last of his water, he realized they may be in trouble. Out in this heat, they were not going to last long without water. Then he glanced at the horses and realized they hadn't had had water since the blacksmith's. He scanned the area for sources of water, but only scrub brush could be seen. This could be bad, he realized. Calling them together, he asked, Who still has water? Cassie and Jerome raised their hands, while Tinuk and Delia shook their heads. Seems we've gotten ourselves into a situation, he said. We're going to die out here if we don't find some water, not to mention the horses. What are we to do? Jerome asked. We're miles away from anywhere, and, he glanced around the horizon, it doesn't look like there's any to be found. There's always water, he explained. It's just a matter of getting to it. I don't see any water around here, Tenok said. It's beneath us, under the surface. How are we going to get it? Tenok asked. Magic? Delia guessed, looking questioningly towards James. He nodded. Magic. My plan is to use magic to search beneath the ground, and once I locate some, bring it to the surface. Can you do that? Cassie asked. I think so. Just stay here and keep an eye out for anyone coming. He turned and walked from their camp, looking for a depression or a hole where the water could pool once he brought it up. 30 feet from the camp sat a depression that would suffice. He sat next to it and began concentrating. The magic flowed from him and coursed down below the surface as it searched for water. Surprisingly, he found water not very far below the surface, only about 20 feet or so. He sent his senses farther down and discovered it to be a sizable reservoir. Coming back to himself, he returned to the group. His head was dizzy from the heat and the effort it took in finding the water. Incredibly hot and thirsty after the ordeal, he asked Cassie, "Could I have the rest of your water?" She nodded and handed over her bottles, which he drained completely. "Thanks," he said as he handed it back to her. "Now what?" Jerome asked. "Give me a few minutes to rest and I'll attempt to bring it up." He sat on a wagon, taking advantage of the shade provided by the newly acquired covering. Even though the sun was about to go down, it was still fairly hot. After a few minutes later, his dizziness subsided. He got down from the wagon and walked back to the area where he would attempt to bring up the water. Standing next to the depression, he summoned the magic, sending it below the surface. He took his time, finding fissures and cracks, weak spots that could be loosened and widened, making a way for the water to reach the surface. Little by little, as he widened a crack here and broke through stone there, he sensed the water working its way to the surface. Once a fissure had been created halfway to the surface, the ground began to shake. It broke his concentration and ended the spell. He stumbled as the shaking increased. Cries of confusion came from the others who watched from the wagon. Suddenly, the ground cracked open and water geysered outward, shooting 20 feet in the air before falling back down into the depression. The area rapidly filled with water as it continued surging out of the ground. Jerome reached James aside and clapped him on the shoulder. "You did it!" The others came to add their congratulations. The water filled the depression to capacity, creating a small pond 30 feet in diameter. Then the water spilled over the side and was quickly absorbed back into the dry ground. Tenok knelt by the water and kept his hands tasting it. He looked at the others and shouted, "It's good and cool!" They came and drank their fill. The horses smelled the water and strained against their tethers in an attempt to reach it. Jiren hurried over and released them, allowing them to come and drink their fill. Every water bottle was filled before returning to the wagons. "We were lucky there was no one around," James said as he relaxed into the campfire. "Why?" Cassie asked. "Don't want anyone to know I can do magic. They may still be on the lookout for the rogue mage that caused the destruction back at the city. I don't want them putting two and two together." "What does two and two have to do with anything?" asked Tenok. "Sorry, that's just an expression for where I come from. It means they might connect me with the things I did at the city. If they knew I was a mage, that is." "Oh," he said. "Maybe the next town we come to, we should buy several water barrels to carry with us," Jerome suggested. "Good idea. We should have plenty of money left in the chest." "What is the next town?" Cassie asked. "Haven't a clue," James admitted. "I've never been here before." "How do you know that we're even going in the right direction?" Jerome asked. "I figured Khorasan should be farther south," he replied. "A major slave market would hardly be on the edge of the empire. They would want it accessible to a large number of their people, so it stands to reason that it would be deeper within the empire, thus south." As they relaxed around the campfire, James absent-mindedly reached for his backpack, but then remembered that they had left it back at Mountainside when they broke out of jail. Thinking of the things that were now lost to him, he got a little sad and then a little mad. "This place is just going from bad to worse," he thought quietly to himself. "Now I've gone and lost my backpack." "Oh my God!" he suddenly exclaimed, sitting up abruptly. "What?" "My backpack! What about it?" Tenok inquired. "It's back at the jail." "So?" said Tenok. "We all lost some things when we left there. We were in a little bit of a hurry." "You don't understand," exclaimed James. "I had some papers in there, notes I had been keeping about magic and other important stuff." When he saw that he was not getting through to them, he said, "My notes will make them realize that a mage was there. If they assume I'm the same mage as was at the City of Light, then they will know we're heading south. And the only reason we would be heading south," continued Delia, "would be to rescue someone from the slavers that had been taken from when the city fell." "That's one reason," James agreed. And if they come to that conclusion, they'll be waiting for us. What do we do? James looked to Jerome and said, someone needs to go back and retrieve it, or at least destroy it and the papers it carries. He flashed James a dark look. You mean go all the way back there? On the off chance that no one, on the slim chance, I like slim chance, on the slim chance that no one had yet looked inside and seen them? He shook his head. I don't know. You're the only one who can do it, James urged. He considered for a few minutes and made up his mind. All right, fine, I'll do it. Getting up, he went to his horse and put the saddle and tack back on. Shouldn't you wait till morning? Cassie asked. Shaking his head, he said, no, I better get started now. The sooner I get there, the less likely someone will have read the papers. James gave him some coins, traveling expenses. He took the coins, putting them in a pocket. Once he had the horse ready for travel, he mounted and said, where shall I meet up with you? We'll continue down the road and stop at the next main town, James explained. We'll stay there for a day, and if you don't show up, we'll continue on to Khorasan. All right, he said, I'll meet you there. Be careful, Delia and Cassie said at the same time. I will, he assured them. See you in a couple days. He then headed his horse back down the road to the north and kicked it into a gallop as he raced for Mountainside. Hope he'll make it back, Cassie said, worry in his voice. He will, Tanaka said with confidence. He looked into the night where Jerome had disappeared and said again, he will. And that's chapter 7. So when I wrote that, it didn't even occur to me, when they left Mountainside to grab his backpack. So I had written all this. And basically when I got to this point here, is when I realized that he did have his backpack. So I thought, well, I'll send Jerome back to get it. And so, but the notes, were they in English or are they in the language of the world? See, if they were in English, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter if they found them. But, but James is, maybe James is thinking that he's talking in that language, so he's automatically writing in that language. I don't know. So, but anyway, Jerome's heading back to get the papers, which creates a very fun scene, entertaining scene when he gets there. So that's chapter 7. We'll do chapter 8 in a little bit. Personal stuff. My brother, this Sunday, fried chicken Sunday, yes, with some fried squash, some taters and gravy, and my mom made a blackberry or blueberry, one or the other. No, it would have been a blueberry cobbler. That sounds pretty good. We got some ice cream too. So it's gonna be some good eating today. My daughter Brianna's coming in. Bree, the one that posts on TikTok with me, and she's coming in. I'm hoping she'll bring a watermelon. I'm really jonesing for a watermelon right now. And it's the peak of the season, so let's enjoy them. So chapter 8 tomorrow, and then tomorrow's Monday. So, okay, tomorrow Monday, my brother's heading to California, and then Joseph wants me to take him to the Choctaw Casino because he had bought. This weekend is our homecoming. Next weekend's our I think that next weekend's our homecoming weekend here in Boswell. The last Saturday of June is our homecoming. So I think that's next weekend. This weekend. Yeah, this weekend coming up. So he bought a ticket to the rodeo because around here there's a rodeo in every town. And we're not going to the rodeo, but he spends $5 for the ticket and he gets a $20 free play at the Choctaw Casino, right? So we're gonna go into Durant tomorrow to the Choctaw Casino. And I figure we'll probably be there around 10 a.m. or so. I won't be there very long because that $20 will go pretty fast. I won't gamble. I'm not that interested in gambling anymore. I mainly wander around, see the sights, and drink free pop. Because the casinos around here, maybe they do that everywhere, but they have the pop dispensers, and you just go up and you just fill what you want. I thought about bringing one of these empty jugs and filling it up, but they probably would allow that. And like drink it, like moonshine or something. So chapter 8 tomorrow, I'll do that before we leave. And then we'll continue on. That's it. Y'all take care.